Hi everyone! I hope my terrific students are all doing well. Today we're going to talk about properties of addition and multiplication. And they're going to help us in working with expressions and equations eventually. So let's go ahead at the top of our paper. Let's go ahead and write properties. Make sure you're at the next clean, unused page of your notebook. Don't skip any pages. And write properties of adding and multiplying. And you're probably thinking, well, that's kind of weird. We don't usually talk about adding and multiplying together. We usually talk about adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing. But today we're going to talk about some ways that we can work with expressions and equations that are exclusive to addition and multiplication, and they make life easier when we start working with them. Okay, so the first thing I want you to think about, though, is that these properties are going to work because of equivalent expressions. And when you think of equivalent expressions, think about equivalent fractions, just like 1/2 equals 2/4. Okay, so equivalent expressions, these are equal, right? Equivalent expressions are expressions that have the same value. Okay, I don't know why my handwriting is so messy today. Maybe I'm holding my pen weird. Sorry about that. All right, so now that we've brought up expressions that have the same value, we're going to learn how to work with them. So we kind of have to dig in a little bit for that to make any sense for you. So let's just keep on going, okay? So first we're going to talk about something called the commutative. Commutative. It's a funny word. Property. All right, so my question for you guys is what does the word commutative sound like? Hopefully you guys have heard the word commute. It's usually pertaining to when people go to work. They commute to work. They're driving to work or they're taking the train to work. We don't really have too many people around here that do that, but in big cities, people take the train to go to work. Sometimes they take the bus to go to work. Sometimes they carpool and they travel with people to go to work. But what I want you to think about is commutative means that we're moving something. We're going to take something and put it somewhere else. So we're going to move or commute a number. So the commutative property is about movement. But the order does not change the value. And underline that not. It does not change the value. So when we commute a number, we move a number, it's not going to change the value of the expression. Okay. Remember, this only works with addition. Sorry, I skipped the A. And I'm going to show you. Okay, so for instance, if I say 3, let me write it in red for you. If I say 3 plus 2, If I commute the numbers and change their order, the value is still going to be 5. So 3 plus 2 equals 5, and 2 plus 3 equals 5. You guys have been doing this forever. You just might not have known the name of what you were doing. So you were using the commutative property. So it only works for addition and multiplication. So here's your multiplication example. If I say 4 times 5 and I commute the numbers, I use the commutative property to move them, and I change it to 5 times 4, well, 4 times 5 is 20, and 5 times 4 is 20, so the value, and I just realized I spelled that wrong, I'm sorry, the value did not change. Okay, so the value doesn't change when you change the order of the numbers. But it's super important that you remember that this does not work with subtraction. Really important. Because if I say, for example, 3 minus 2, that would be 1, right? But if I said 2 minus 3, that would actually be -1. So that's not the same thing. So that means it's not equal. So we put a line through the equal sign. Okay? Or division. It doesn't work for division either. For instance, if I say 8 divided by 4, you know that the answer is 2. But if I say 4 divided by 8, is it 2? Nope. So it's not equal. Okay? It's simply shown by a line through the equal sign, okay? So that's commutative. We just changed the order. Think of it as changing the order. Changing the order. Okay, so now we're going to look at the associative property. Okay, so the associative property when you hear the word associative, I'm hoping that you hear a word that sounds familiar in there, and that would be associate or associate. And when you think of that, I want you to think about like how you can associate with different people. For instance, I'm a teacher, so I associate with a lot of teachers, but I also associate with a lot of students. Or I enjoy tennis and I play a lot of it, so I associate with a lot of tennis players. But I also enjoy CrossFit, so I associate with a lot of CrossFit people that work out at the CrossFit gym. So basically what you're saying is you can be a part of two different things, okay? So the associative property also does not change the value. So changing the grouping, this time we're changing the groups because we associate with different groups, does not change the value. All right, and again, it only works with addition and multiplication. So, only, oh my goodness, I can't write today. Works with addition. Let me give you an example. So let's say I have the expression 3 plus, and then in parentheses I have 4 plus 7. By changing my grouping, I'm not going to change my answer. Now, I don't change the order of any of those numbers. Remember, that was commutative. Over here, I'm just changing the grouping. So instead, 3 plus 4 are in parentheses, plus 7. When you look at that, you should see 4 plus 7 is 11, plus 3 is 14. And then when you look over here, 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 7 is 14. So it's the same value. And then it also works with multiplication. So and give you an example. 3 times 10 times 5 is the same thing as saying 3 times 10, see how I changed the parentheses, times 5. So if I do my order of operations, remember I'm going to solve those parentheses first. So 10 times 5 is 50, times 3 is 150. And then if I do 3 times 10, that's 30. And then times 5, that's 150. So my value did not change. I just changed the grouping. All right. And then we need to remember, does not work with subtraction or division. Okay. Okay, so those are the two properties. Now let's take a look at, and also over on the side over here, go ahead and write changing the group or groups. Okay. All right, let's take a look at an example. First, my first example. We're going to simplify the expression and explain the properties. And it's really important that you're able to identify which property you're using, okay? So for A, we're going to simplify 7 plus 12 plus X. Okay, so don't be worried just because I threw in a variable. Nothing changes. Remember, the value of this does not change. So if you remember our properties, you're going to remember that I can't really switch anything up because this is in parentheses, so it's kind of locked. So the only thing that I can do is change what's in the parentheses, okay? So that's the associative property. So I'm going to change it to 7 plus 12 plus X. Okay? And if you remember, that's called the associative property. So you can either write associative, or you can write associative property of addition, APA. That's the acronym, associative property of addition. Or you could just write associative property. That will be fine. Okay? Now, if you look after we use the associative property, I can actually do a little math to simplify, can't I? Before, I couldn't add 12 to x because I don't know what x is, right? But now that I've moved my parentheses so that I can add my 12 and 7, now I can do a little math. Remember before, since this was in a parenthesis, I couldn't add it to this. But now I can. So I have 7 plus 12 is 19 plus x. And that's as far as I can simplify it. That's as small as I can make it because I haven't been given a value for x. All right. So let's go ahead and try another one. This is going to be B. And for this one, we've got 6.1 plus x plus 8.4. Okay, so now I have to decide, am I using commutative? Am I using associative? What am I going to do? All right, so when I look at this, I can't commute it because I can't take this out of the parentheses. Can't do that. But what I can do is I can switch the x and the 6.1 so that the 6.1 is next to the 8.4. All right? So if I switch the x and the 6.1, remember I have to carry the rest down. Right there I use the commutative property of addition. But I still can't simplify it yet, can I? Now that I did the commutative and these are next to each other, hopefully you're seeing it. Now I can use the associative. So sometimes you have to use two properties, okay? So now I can switch it up and I can say, oh, let me put this in the parentheses and this outside, because now I can group them together, change the grouping. So that is the APA, the associative property of addition. Okay, so now I do the math and I add it. Well, 6.1 plus 8.5 is 14.5. And now I no longer need parentheses because I already did what was in it. So now I just bring down the rest of the problem. And I can't do anything else because I don't know the value of x. Nobody has said, hey, x is worth 4 or x is worth 10. So I have to leave it just that way. Okay? All right, let's do another. C. 5 times 11y. Now remember that this is 5, and then in these parentheses, when you see 11y, remember that that is 11 times y. You just don't have to write a multiplication sign. So since I have all multiplication here, remember, all I need to do is associate my 11 with the 5 so I can multiply those two numbers, okay? So then I'm going to switch it to 5 times 11, and notice I'm using the dot because we're doing algebra, and then times y. And that is the associative property of multiplication because we're doing multiplication here. And so now I just multiply. 5 times 11 is 55. Y. I no longer need that sign. So now it's just 55y. All right, let's do another. D. I've got x plus 5/8 plus 1/4. All right, we have to figure out what we can do. It's all addition, and I see my grouping. I can't do anything in this grouping, so I can't simplify. So that must mean I should change my grouping, because I don't want to change my order, because putting the x isn't going to help. If I flip these two, it's not changing the order in here is not going to help me. But changing my grouping with the associative property is going to help me. So instead, I'm going to do x plus, and I need a little space in there, 5/8 plus 1/4. All right. And remember, that was the associative property of addition. Got to be able to identify it. Associative, we changed the group. All right, and then so you need to find the least common denominator, and then you need to add. You would change this to 2/8, and it would become 7/8. X plus 7/8 is your answer. Okay, I'm going to give you a few to try on your own. So I'd like you to copy these down and then go ahead and pause the video. Okay, 1 is 10 plus A plus 9. Remember, it's not about solving this in your head. The best mathematicians can solve this in their head, but they still know they have to do it on paper and do it the proper way. This is about learning the properties, okay? So it's not about doing it in your head. Make sure that you're actually doing the work, okay? Which property, use the property, and then simplify, okay? Number 2. Is 5 times 4n. And then number 3 is C plus 2/3 plus 1/2. All right, so go ahead and pause the video. I'm so sorry. Go ahead and pause the video and then come back and we will solve them and see how you did. All right, so hopefully you just came back from working on these problems. And so we're going to look at number 1 first. And when I look at number 1, I can see that I am definitely not going to be able to regroup this, because if I regroup it, I'm going to put parentheses around the 10 and the A, and I still can't simplify it. So I'm going to use that associative property, that commutative property to change the order. Okay? So I'm going to take the 10 plus 9 plus A. See how I changed the order? And then now I can, so that was the commutative property of addition. And now I'm going to change the grouping by going 10 plus 9 plus A. And that's the associative property of addition. So 10 plus 9, 19 plus A. Okay, next one. 5 times 4n. Remember, the same thing as saying 5 times 4 times n. So it's all multiplication. So I know that I can change my grouping because the 5 and the 4 are next to each other, so I don't need to change the order. So I can change it to 5 times 4 times n, and that is the associative property of multiplication. Now I just do the math. 5 times 4 is 20, n. I no longer need the dot because there's no parentheses or anything. Okay, and then the last one, you might need to come over and do a little side math, but hopefully you recognize that I need to change the grouping, so that's the associative property. So hopefully you realize you can do C plus 2/3 plus 1/2 and put those in parentheses this time. That's the associative property of addition. Just change the group. Change in who the 2/3 is talking to. Who are their friends? Okay, so I've got to do 2/3 and 1/2. I'm sorry, I'm going to look for the least common denominator, which would be 6. So in order to change the 3 to a 6, I have to multiply by 2. So I'm going to change 2/3 to 4/6. And in order to change this 2 to a 6, I'm going to multiply by 3. So I'm going to have 3/6 plus C. Remember, I got to bring it down. And now I'm going to do my math. So I've got 4/6 plus 3/6. That is 7/6 plus the C. Remember, I got to do C plus 7/6. Bring it down. And then remember, I should usually always simplify this. So C, divide the top into the bottom. 6 goes into 7 one time. And that leaves me with 1/6. There you go. If you got this far, you still got it right, but you should simplify it and divide. But either of those answers would be correct. You have a practice activity that you're going to work on, and we'll see you at your next lesson.